Yeah, you stand with us wherever you guys want. Stand. Where's Skubik? I don't see him. We must have scared him off. You know, he was at our last press conference. It was incredible. Nobody had seen him. He asked some tough questions. We send our regards to Rick Albin. So he's a great guy, and this is good. Well, good. Thanks for being here. Jordan, who did a great job at our last press conference. Incredible. Or was that 2 press conferences ago? It's hard to keep straight. Well, there's so much politics going on around here. Is Sarah here?
I don't see her yet.
Oh, we'll get her. So there's so much politics going on up here today. I mean, you see people announcing for other offices and, suing each other and things like that. But what I wanted to do was have a major policy announcement. You know, somebody should be up here talking about policy. I mean, I saw the Senate, these people, they authorize a lawsuit and go home. But we decided we wanted to talk about public policy. And basically, I wanted to put out a marker on the issue of crime and law and order in the state of Michigan. Before I do that, I do want to announce something. We've made a decision about who our new judiciary chair is going to be, and I told you this was going to happen. Representative Sarah Leitner will be our judiciary chair. She's going to do an incredible job. And Representative Brian Begole will be our vice chair of the Judiciary Committee in the House. And I picked these two because they're strong supporters of our law enforcement. They stand for law and order. And also, I think they'll do a great job with our court system also, and supporting our prosecutors, at least the ones that enforce the laws. So, so that's out there. And then I'm grateful for all the law enforcement that are here with us today. The St. John's Police Chief, Dave Kirk, the Allegan County Sheriff, Frank Baker, Calhoun County Sheriff, Steve Hinckley, Calhoun County Prosecutor, Dave Gilbert, Cass County Prosecutor, Vic Fitz, the Executive Director of the Michigan Sheriff's Association, and one of my former sheriff, Matt Saxton, the Detroit Police Chief, Todd Bettison, and the Jackson County Sheriff, Gary Schutte. So thank you for being here. Appreciate having all these friends in law enforcement here. And we just sat down, we had a round table, and we talked through, and this is going to be a change from what you've been hearing in Lansing the last few years. We had a round table where we talked about how we can support crime victims, right, rather than what they used to do, which was talk about how to help criminals. We talked about how to support crime victims and how to give our law enforcement the tools they need to do their jobs, how to recruit and retain new law enforcement officers, and how to support our local communities. So I'm just going to go through a few policy items here today with you. You know, look, I mean, we just won a House majority, and I went out and campaigned across Michigan, okay? And I'll tell you this, the people of Michigan are concerned about violent crime in our state. Now, I give our law enforcement credit. You know, there's a lot of good things that have been happening, and our law enforcement are working very hard. But we're still a top 10 state for violent crime in Michigan, and you see us above the national average. So we still have a lot of work to do. I'll just say that what we saw with Democrats running the House was a series of bills that I'm happy to announce that with Matt Hall as the Speaker of the House and with this team, a House Republican majority, are now dead. So they can introduce them, but they're dead, and they're never going to see the light of day with me as Speaker and under our House Republican leadership and with these two leading the Judiciary Committee. So I'm going to tell you what they are, and then we'll talk about some of the positive legislation and things that we're going to do. Number one, good time credits, they're dead, okay? They're not happening. And the reason is these good time credits and the productivity credits are both dead, all right? So these are policies where they let violent criminals out of prison early for things like taking classes or not committing crimes when they're in prison. We're not going to do that. You look at our truth in sentencing laws in Michigan years ago passed Proposal B with 74% of the vote, where people said, we want our sentences to be truthful. They call it truth in sentencing. So when you're sentenced with a crime, that's the time you serve. It's not you take some classes and while you're in prison, or you don't commit more crimes and then they let you off real early. That's not truth in sentencing. That's not what our Constitution says. It's not what the people of Michigan want. People of Michigan and crime victims want assurance that people that commit violent crimes and serious crimes are behind bars for the time they're sentenced. The next thing that's dead is second look. They call it second look. Very interesting. But what I know it would do is it would take violent criminals and it would allow resentencing hearings every 10 years. You murder somebody, you commit a serious, sexual assault, and every 10 years, they drag the victims back up for a resentencing hearing where the victims have to once again relive this horrible thing that happened. And then they even create presumptions that say, if you have asthma, you get off, you're going to get out, okay? So creating these presumptions that let violent criminals out of prison after 10 years when they're sentenced to much longer terms than that, that's done. It's not happening. I'll just tell you, under these second look policies, 10,000 criminals would be eligible right now to get out of prison. 5,000 murderers, 2,000 sexual abusers, 1,000 armed robbers, and 500 people who committed assault with intent to murder. This is not happening. We're not supporting policies like this. This is the wrong thing to do for the people of Michigan. The people of Michigan want violent criminals to serve their time. Cash bail is dead. It's not happening, the changes on that. Getting rid of cash bail is dead. You see these crazy movements across our country where they want to restrict judges' authorities to require bail, mandating release of many offenders, including people with very long rap sheets. In places like New York and California, this has meant new crimes that could have been prevented, and we're not going to have those failed liberal policies here in Michigan. In New York, 2/3 of the people who were released with a prior conviction were rearrested. California voters overturned their ban on cash bail after seeing what it did to their communities. We need incentives to fight crime, not incentives to commit more crime, and that's why these bills to eliminate cash bail are dead with me as Speaker of the House and with this Republican House majority. We're going to support that system. The other legislation that's dead is these reforms on this juvenile life without parole, where they want to eliminate life sentences for juvenile offenders, no matter how serious their crime was. We shouldn't be letting people out of prison who commit premeditated murders. It's just not happening. And that's really an insult to victims' families, so we're not going to support any of that legislation either. I supported criminal justice reform my first term. We did expungement. We did a lot of things. I understand that we need to be sensitive to, people commit mistakes when they're young and things like that. But, letting out murderers early, letting out serial, rapists and people like that, that's not happening. These violent offenders need to serve their time. And so the first thing that I want to say to all the crime victims and to all the law enforcement officers in Michigan is the Michigan House Republican majority has your back. And we're going to restore your trust in government. We're going to, reverse this trend so you feel cared about again. And the first step of that is stopping and killing these dangerous policies that assault crime victims, and now moving forward with a set of very positive things that we're going to do. So I'll talk about some of those things. But number one, we're going to protect victims by killing those bad policies. Number two, we want to recruit, retain, and support our police. So we're going to focus on policies that do that. And one of those things is going to be moving a public safety trust fund for Michigan. And this would be the first time state funds are used to target violent crime in local communities. And local law enforcement needs our support. They've been defunded, they've been put down for far too long, and this is how we can meet their needs and help them do their job instead of government getting in the way. So I was going to invite up Chief Bettison to talk a little bit more about the Public Safety Trust Fund.
Thank you so much, Speaker Hall. It is definitely my pleasure to be here today. The Public Safety Trust Fund will definitely benefit communities, cities like the city of Detroit. And so we look forward to the passage of, it was 4605, House Bill 4605 and 4606. That will allow the City of Detroit Police Department to hire more officers. That will allow us to hire officers to work in critical areas along with our responding to mental health calls. It will allow us to hire more neighborhood police officers. It will allow me to also hire retired police officers and others to be able to add additional resources to our cold case units. I have a group of mothers in the city of Detroit that request to meet with me regularly. They call themselves Mothers Keeping Boots on the Ground. They've lost their children to homicides. Even though the city of Detroit has experienced year over year homicide reductions and non-fatal shooting reductions, at the beginning of the year, I reported out that we had 203 homicides the previous year, and for 2024, which was the lowest that we had in over 66 years. So the crime is continuing to go down, but we have to do more. We have to hire more cops. We have to utilize our technology, but also we have to invest in community violence intervention. We have a pilot program in the city of Detroit called Shot Stoppers, and these 6 community groups that we actually put in the most violent areas in Detroit, they have beat the citywide trend as far as in their 3 to 5 square mile area, reducing quarter after quarter homicides and non-fatal shootings. I'll give you an example. Just this previous quarter, Detroit Friends and Family had an approximately 80% reduction of homicides and non-fatal shootings in their area. So we know that it works. Force Detroit has had up to a 75% reduction in their 3 to 5 square mile area on the northwest side of Detroit in the Warrendale neighborhood. And so these groups, these community groups, need to be funded as well. And we're going to take a third of our portion of the monies received from Public Safety Trust Fund that the City of Detroit will be allocated, which we're looking at approximately about $18 million. We would take a third of it to continue funding community. We're going to hire more officers, and we're going to continue to push down violence in the City of Detroit. So I thank you, Speaker Hall, for your leadership. And I know the victims of the City of Detroit and our residents thank you as well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, and we've worked closely with some great representatives, Karen Whitsett and Alabas Farhat from Detroit on these issues in the past, and we're going to be working very closely with you, Chief, and your mayor to make this happen. And you know, it almost happened at the end of last session, but with Republican leadership in the House, it's going to happen this year. And so we're going to work hard on it. And I just think, again, this is our opportunity to build inroads into our urban areas and our cities, places like Detroit, and ensure that they have the tools they need to keep their communities safe. But also, you know, in some of the rural areas too, they need this funding and help. You know, the other thing, we're going to restore funding for our school resource officers. The Democrats cut this funding. It's one of the reasons they lost the election, by the way. But the Democrats cut funding for school resource officers. We're going to restore it. You know, I've met and done some meetings with Sheriff Baker, one of my sheriffs in Allegan County over here. And, you know, we've met firsthand with school resource officers and with superintendents in schools who've told us that issues were addressed early and prevented because those school resource officers were in the schools, and they were building strong relationships and positive relationships with our youth. I mean, our youth need to have positive interactions with law enforcement, and school resource officers do that. So we're going to restore that funding and then dedicate it to school resource officers, because sometimes they're sneaky and they try to let it go to other things. But we're going to dedicate it to that purpose and restore that funding. We want to make police a profession people want to enter. It's a tough job, and it's even tougher now with all these liberal politicians who are trying to handcuff our cops and give criminals a leg up. They need the funding to support their operations, upgrade decades-old equipment, and keep the best officers on the job. We need our prosecutors, first of all, these woke prosecutors who don't prosecute actual crimes. Some of them prosecute their political opponents, but they don't prosecute actual violent criminals. And they spend a lot of time trying to prosecute police officers. We're going to rein that in. Police officers are on the front lines keeping us safe, and some of these overzealous prosecutors need to be reined in. Whether they're prosecuting their political opponents or prosecuting police officers, they're going to be reined in. And then secondly, we need to enforce our laws against violent gun crimes and other things. We need to enforce those laws, and the political prosecution needs to stop, and they need to start prosecuting based on what the law says. And we've got some real strong prosecutors up here that run their counties that way. You know, the other thing, we're going to work hand in hand with President Trump's administration to crack down on the illegal immigration. We are going to ban, we're going to push back and stop the sanctuary counties and cities in our state. You know, we saw the murderers and other things that happened, the illegal alien crime in Michigan, everything from Sturgis to Grand Rapids and all over the state where you see illegal aliens that have committed murders and criminal sexual conduct. We're going to partner with President Trump to ensure that those criminals are deported. So I'll stop there for now. I'll turn it over to our new Judiciary Chair, Sarah Leitner, and then we'll take some questions, but we wanted to give Chair Leitner a chance to talk.
Thank you. I'll be short and sweet. Thank you, Speaker Hall, for entrusting me with this new responsibility of chairing the House Judiciary Committee. It's an incredible honor for me, and I'm excited to take on the challenge. Thank you for your confidence in my leadership and vision. It's time to refocus on policies that back our law enforcement, hold criminals accountable, and protect Michigan families. As the committee chair, I plan to hear legislation that prioritizes these measures. Some of the policy being pushed these past 2 years diminishes the public trust in our judicial system. I hope to have support in the House to make sure criminals are held accountable and not coddled in the system. We need to ensure victims receive the justice they deserve. We need to make sure we get increased penalties for fentanyl dealers across the finish line, because too many of our communities see the devastation this dangerous drug has on its residents. We need to give our law enforcement, prosecutors, and judges the tools they need to help with this crisis. I look forward to working with all of my stakeholders and ensure public safety and smart criminal justice reform. Thank you.
That's great. Oh, go ahead. And we'll let our new Vice Chair, Brian Begole, say a couple words. Go ahead. Yep.
Thank you, Speaker Hall. Good afternoon, everyone. Like I said, my name is Representative Brian Begole. I represent the 71st District, which encompasses almost all Shiawassee County, southern Saginaw, and western Genesee County. What you may not know is I did 32 years in law enforcement prior to coming here to the State House, and it was a true honor to serve the people of my district. But I think this gives me a unique insight as to what we're dealing with here, and I want to thank Speaker Hall for having the confidence to appoint me to this position. In addition to the experience I bring to the Republican caucus, I feel most strongly about supporting the men and women that, protect us every day. They dedicate their lives and make sacrifices. And so to be able to sit on this side of things and maybe influence some of the policies that they have to work under is very important. We have a real problem right now. I mean, we really have to change the culture of how people view the police. I grew up in the 70s. My father was a district judge, and my uncle was the chief of police in Novi for 40 years. And I remember back in a time where police were just highly respected. And that's not the case nowadays, Unfortunately, the media, and hopefully none of you, have spread the worst about the police. And I want to tell you, we have almost 300 million people in this nation, and police have contact with millions and millions of people on a daily basis. And 99.9% of the time, those are positive and professional encounters. Unfortunately, a small, minute number are taken and many times blow out of shape. But the ones that aren't, we want to deal with them. We don't want those police officers in the profession to tarnish the reputations of the ones that have dedicated their life. And we're focused on doing that. We want to make sure that the police have the tools they need and move forward. This police reform is nothing but a masquerade to tie the hands of the law enforcement officers that are dedicated to protect us. So why would you want to give an upper hand to the criminals that are out there? I'm all for law enforcement improvement, so we won't call it a criminal justice reform. I'm going to compare these sheriffs and chiefs to maybe a manager or supervisor at a business. I mean, I think a lot of people, they want to make improvements. They want their business to flow smoothly. They want to improve police or the morale of their employees. And that's what these chiefs and these sheriffs do on a daily basis. So we need to support them in that job. And a lot of the efforts they take are self-initiated. They don't need legislation passed. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So we need to respect them. They're chosen leaders in their community, and there's a reason why they are. So I also want to point out that the Democrats' anti-police antics has been terrible for the image of police officers, and it makes the job very unalluring to our youth. And so we can't find people to come in and fill these jobs. So we need to restore that respect for the police. And I'm hoping maybe you'll all help me change that. I just want to share a couple more things with you. When I got into police work, only 1 in 400 people were able to become a police officer. So by the time you made it through your process, only one. That's how in demand police were. And now we have voids everywhere, okay? So let's try to change that. Part of the I can't understand the sense that you would maybe support a criminal before you would a victim or a law-abiding citizen, but that's exactly what's happened under the Democratic trifecta. And I think you've seen tons of bills that came out last term, and they're just radical. And why we'd want that when we can have the opportunity to support our victims is beyond me. The criminal group had the best representation right here in Lansing by the Democrats. I mean, these are violent criminals, had better representation than the victims under their trifecta. So that ends here. And I'm really proud to say, under Speaker Hall's leadership, he's given us the green light to stop any cuddling of the criminals, the hug a thug initiative that the Democrats done. We're gonna crack down on crime. We're gonna support our law enforcement, and that means law enforcement, sheriffs, chiefs, prosecutors, whoever's out there trying to protect the public. We have your back. The Republicans back the blue, and we want everybody to know that. So thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah. You see, I should have let him just give the whole speech. Wasn't he good? All right. Well, my staff warned me that I probably shouldn't do this, but I'll open it up to questions from the media. So go ahead.
This sounds a lot like a lot of stick, very little carrot. When people do come out, whether it's early or after serving their whole term, do we not want, and don't citizens want them to come out rehabilitated? And what's the incentive if you take that away while they're in?
Yeah, well, one of the parts of our justice system is rehabilitation. That's part of it too. But sometimes they get out of step with the fact that that's one of the things you're balancing. So we want to rehabilitate people, and there are a lot of rehabilitation programs when you're in prison. But we also want to get justice for the victims of crime. And what we've seen over the last few years is that's gotten out of balance. We supported my first term, Chair Leitner and I, bills that would allow expungements and some criminal justice reform. I understand we didn't want people to not be able to rent a home or get a job because of some of these lower level offenses in the past. But if you're in a Michigan prison now, largely you're a pretty serious criminal, and you should take the rehabilitation programs that are there. But the idea that you're going to let people get out of prison early for taking classes or not committing crimes, that's going too far. That's why we're going to kill that legislation.
On the topic of supporting officers, a lot of Republicans have been struggling with Trump pardoning January 6th insurrectionists who have assaulted police officers. I just want to know, what do you think about Trump pardoning those people who have harmed police officers while on duty at the Capitol?
Yeah, so President Trump was very clear when he ran for office that he was going to pardon those people. And the people elected him, and he pardoned them. So, I think Craig Mauger, isn't it amazing what this guy does? He writes up 400 promises that Trump made. Let's see if he does any of them. Now, he didn't do that when Biden ran, and I bet you Biden didn't fulfill many promises. I didn't read the story, but my guess is if you went through that checklist, this was one of those 400 things, and he did it. And I bet you look at all those executive orders, and nobody has signed as many executive orders as Trump. I mean, you want to talk about the most transparent president. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. It wasn't like Biden, where Biden said, I'm not going to pardon my family, and then he pardons his whole family on the last day. He said he was going to do it, he did it. The American people wanted that and voted for him. I would just say that you look at all these executive orders, and he signs them right in front of the press and talks about them. Now that's a level of transparency that we've never seen before. It's incredible, and I'm just so impressed with all of these things. I mean, you look at a lot of these EOs on immigration. That's going to make it easier here too for us to get our borders secure. So I've been impressed with what Trump's done over his first couple days, and that's what the people voted for. Yes, Beth.
Can you respond to the Senate's threat today to sue the House if they don't release those 9 last?
I was worried you were going to ask me about that. Can you believe this? I mean, we're up here and we're announcing a major policy initiative, and I had to ask the other day. I said, "Is the Senate even in session?" I mean, you see us, we're moving forward with major bills, and tomorrow, hopefully, you'll see some major action in the House on some legislation. And so, we've had committee hearings, we're moving bills, and one thing, you look at this sick leave bill, we heard the 911 operators talk about that in the past, where the 911 operators, these guys, what do they do when they can't, people can just not show up for work for 3 days and no penalties, and you're a 911 operator? Well, the same thing goes when you're a sheriff and you have the prisons. I mean, what happens if they don't show up? So there's a lot of things going on, both with saving the restaurant industry and restoring the tip credit and our tip system, and the sick leave thing. So we're doing legislation. I had to ask, are these people even in session? Because I hadn't seen one story. I mean, things are so boring around here. They're writing about like Twitter fights between staff and members. It's incredible. So apparently they are in session, because they came in and they said, we're going to sue Matt Hall. Isn't that incredible? I mean, you look at this, we're just trying to follow the Constitution and the law. And I have probably the best attorney in Lansing, Andrew Fink. And Andrew is looking into these constitutional questions and these legal questions. And he's doing a very thorough legal review to determine what to do on this issue of presentment. You know, you look at last term, do you remember this when, and there's a lot of examples of this, but do you remember this when they passed that tax increase for the Grand Rapids hotels? And then Tate didn't present it for months and months and months until Winnie Brinks moved economic development legislation. I mean, that was months and months and months of not presenting a bill, and there's a lot of examples like that. This has been 2 weeks. I mean, thorough legal reviews take a long time. So, look, I mean, if they want to waste taxpayer dollars, they're going to lose in court, I'll tell you that, because whatever decision we come to is going to be by the book under the Constitution and the law. And you look at this, you know, this almost has never happened before, where the prior speaker doesn't file his bills with the governor before he leaves. And so there's just a lot of legal and constitutional questions, and the more we look into it, the more we find. So we're going to do a thorough legal review, but the Senate has no role in telling the House what to do. And I would just say, you know, what a horrible way to start, where they're wasting taxpayer dollars on political lawsuits, much like our Attorney General. And all we're trying to do is get bipartisan work done. And look, if they want those bills, and by the way, I'll just say this. I mean, you look, almost all of the legal scholars are saying that I should not present. And these are not even people that normally support me. I mean, you look at Jim Ananick said that we should not present, or we don't have to. He was the former Democrat Senate leader. There's this guy, they tell me, who worked here for years and years. What's his name, Bruce?
Bruce Timmons.
Bruce Timmons, and this guy almost never supports anything the Republicans do. And this guy came out and said that we should not present. So if we did not present, we would be, according to pretty much every legal expert, even that one that, what's that guy's name? The one that's always suing us, that does some, I don't know, you guys always quote him in MERS. You know, he does a lot of the governor's work. Yeah, Lidl. Lidl even came out and said, look, there's a lot of constitutional questions here, you know, and you look at his analysis. So these are not legal experts that normally agree with us, that are throwing all kinds of questions, legal questions, constitutional questions, and are actually saying we shouldn't present. I'm just saying, look, give us some time to do a thorough legal review to determine whether they're right or whether we should present, because that's our interpretation of the law. But whatever we decide will be according to the Constitution and the law, and the courts will side with us because of that. So Brinks is really, as her first act to sue the House, you know, it may be harder for her to get some of her bills done if that's the way she approaches. It's too bad, you know, bad for bipartisanship, which is what people want. And you even see the governor. Look at the governor showing some leadership and moving more in a direction of working together. And then you have the Senate leader who, you know, who's just not doing that. So it's too bad. Yeah, Jordan.
I just want to return to the public safety trust fund thing for a moment. Last budget cycle, there was $75 million that was supposed to be implemented for that, or the implementation bill never made it through. Was curious how your public safety trust fund might be similar or differ from what was attempted to get through the legislature last year.
Yeah, well, we're going to work very closely with the chief here on that, and his mayor, and, you know, Representatives Karen Whitsett and Ala Farhad, who do a great job on issues like this. So, you know, we'll work very closely with them. You know, I think the chief talked about a lot of reasons why this is a good idea. I'll just say this, you know, it's important that this gets into all of the communities that need it. And I think the legislation that made it out of the House did that last time. And then we want to make sure this funding, the original version out of the House, gets to where it needs to go. So we want this to go into the hands of law enforcement to have the tools they need and the resources they need in order to do their jobs. So just bright line, those are a couple key things for me on that that I think are important. And then we'll look at the details and see whether the Democrats got it all right. I mean, there could be things that the chief says they got wrong. That we need to put in there. So this is the only thing we'll do a second look on this term. We're going to do a second look on this. We're not going to on all the letting the criminals out, but we'll do it on this, make sure we got it right, and that it gets the things to the police who need it. Yes?
And how much would be in the fund in your plan?
I think right now it's about $75 million that's in there. Is that right? They've budgeted it. And we have to pass legislation that basically creates the fund, because they can't spend the money without that implementation law. And then we'll look at what we're going to do in the future years. Was there anything you were going to say? Are you good? All right. And then we'll look at what we're going to do in the future years based on the money that's available. And, you know, I've told you, I mean, we're going to, look, with Ann Bolin as a budget hawk, working with the Mad Dog, Matt Maddock, there's going to be a lot of money that we can reallocate to Public Safety Trust Fund in this next budget. Yes, I'll come over here, but yeah.
So I do have a question. When you think about the bills that are from last year, Senate Democrats might see this press conference and say, well, doesn't eliminating the 80-20 rule, does that provide an incentive to public safety and law enforcement? What would be your response to that?
So what I would say is this, look, we're agnostic to the policy here. This is a question of whether a prior legislature can adjourn without sending their bills to the governor, presenting their bills, and whether a future legislature is required or must do that. That's really the question. It's a constitutional question. It's a legal question. There are going to be people writing law reviews papers on this for years and years and years, because it's one of those rare things that, it's a very interesting legal question. So that's why we have to spend, dedicate quite a bit of time to a thorough legal review. But again, this all would have been averted if Democrat Speaker Tate would have just presented these bills before the session ended, as has been what just about every speaker and Senate leader has done for the whole history of this state and every other state. So if Democrats feel so strongly about that, they can pass the bill through the Senate and work the process again. And if it passes the Senate and House, and I'm going to present bills. That's something I decided. I'm going to present bills. They didn't present bills, but I'm going to present bills. And so if it passes the Senate and House this term, to me, it would make sense to present the bill, and then the governor could sign it or not sign it. But, we're not talking about the merits of the bill. We're looking at the constitutional legal questions.
I do have a double question. When you think about the police accountability package, that was introduced and worked on during the Republican-controlled legislature. Are you saying that that package is done now?
Well, I'm just going to say this, that we're going to protect our law enforcement. We're going to support victims of crime. And like I said, these woke prosecutors that are prosecuting their political opponents and police, we're going to rein them in. So, I'll have to review all the details of that package, but if it does those things, then we're not going to do it. Over here, yes, Sam.
You guys don't want it. Nobody wants bad cops. I heard from Utah plenty of times before. I guess I'm just curious what your view on an accountability measure, like making it easier for departments to remove or blacklist officers that have engaged in this conduct.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, you look at it and, if somebody has been fired from all these departments because they've done things that are really bad and then they can't tell other departments, I mean, I understand having a conversation around that, because, I mean, if they really are truly a bad actor, it'd be good to communicate that to others, right? But, in my job, right, I mean, that you get into all these HR things when you do that. So I think that's something we'll take a look at. But, you see this abuse where the prosecutors are targeting police for political reasons, and they're targeting their political opponents for political reasons, and they're choosing not to enforce certain laws because of their woke political ideology. That's what we're going to crack down on. Well, obviously, you look at Dana Nessel, right? And, I think we have oversight committees that are going to be looking into that. And I think you look at some of the things she's done. I mean, she came out and said she was going to, accused me of committing a crime. And then later said, I just had I was having a bad day or whatever she said. What was it?
Frustrated.
She was frustrated. I mean, is that, that's not really, you have a lot of power in these positions, and to threaten in that manner, in that job, and then say, I was frustrated, not a good thing. Yes?
Speaker Hall, did you invite
Yeah, I didn't invite MSP. You know, it'd be interesting. I mean, I think your conversations about the department and that colonel, I don't think he's running his department very well, so we'll see. But, you know, through our oversight and our appropriations subcommittees, there'll probably be a lot of conversations about that department. I mean, this was one of the finest police forces in the country, the Michigan State Police. It was revered. And now it's just strife with turmoil and a lot of questions. So we're going to work very hard to reform that department. And I think our local law enforcement and our state law enforcement should partner with President Trump's administration, and we should seek to enforce our federal immigration laws, and I'm hopeful that they will. Yes?
I think when we also have this conversation of the criminal justice system, I think going into that, the corrections officers, I mean, they're being impacted by those bills that are under legal review. Is there any work to help with those pension bills for those corrections officers? If you tell them, talking to the correctional organization president, they're understaffed, they're struggling.
Right.
Trying to get some numbers, people back into this.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and I know we, one of the things Rep. Leitner and Rep. Bagola and I, we supported at the local corrections level, and we have some great organizations we partner with, the Police Officers Association of Michigan and the Fraternal Order of Police. We help make sure that their corrections officers were included in the PA 312 and things like that, so that they're protected. So, that was at the local level. But I just say, number one, whether we support the bills or not, these are constitutional and legal questions on presentment. And so, if we can't present, or if we shouldn't present, the merits of the bill are irrelevant to that conversation. So I'll say this, you talk about the state police. I mean, another department that really needs some oversight and some very close scrutiny through the House Appropriations Committee is the Corrections Department. You talk to our UP legislators, people like Carl Bonak and Dave Preston and Greg Markinen, or even, Rep. Leitner and Kathy Schmaltz. They're in touch with our corrections workers on a daily basis. And they're all telling me that the Corrections Department and the state need to do more to make these attractive jobs. They're tough jobs. We need to make them attractive jobs. So it is a priority of ours that, as House Republicans, that we're going to work very hard to improve our Corrections Department and make those jobs more desirable. So there are a lot of ways we can do that, and I trust Rep. Leitner, Rep. Schmaltz, and our UP legislators to help me figure that out. Anything you want to say?
A solution to that? The pension bills would be the solution to that?
The pension bills are something, if the Senate Democrats want to introduce and try to move through the Senate, and they come to the House, and this is while we're doing a thorough legal review. I mean, we might present them because we find out, hey, we think that we should present them according to the law. But while this thorough legal review is going on, I mean, they could pass those bills. Instead, they're just suing people and doing nothing else, but they could pass those bills. We look at them. If they have merit, we'd pass them. But, there's a lot of things they're shoving in there, like DNR conservation officers. And I know the Michigan State Police oppose the bills because they think it jeopardizes their pension funds. So in that scenario where there was a new bill, we would have to look through that and figure out how do you balance all that stuff. But for me, it is a priority for me and our House Republican caucus to help our corrections workers to find a way to make those jobs more attractive and to make those environments safer, because they're very tough jobs, but they're very much needed. Any other questions?
Speaker Hall, Representative Hope chaired this committee last term. Is she your pick for minority vice chair? And if not, when are we going to make that announcement?
Yeah, so, I think you know that, Leader Puri has been very overwhelmed with his responsibilities and has been kind of drowning in his position. And one thing that we saw is a lot of efforts to punish his members. I mean, just so you know, I saw a lot of false reporting on this. The only name that was floated to me at all before I announced our appropriations vice chair for the Democrats was Julie Brixey, okay? Nobody presented Will Snyder. And so then they, after we make the announcement of Alabas Farhat, then they present us Will Snyder after that, and then they do all this weird spin to try to convince you people that we picked Farhat over Snyder. I'm just saying, they never mentioned Snyder until after the press conference and after the announcement. So what we've seen in a lot of the decisions from Leader Puri is that he's been, I would say, punishing some of his members. So we're going to look very carefully at those assignments and see which, and we sent a questionnaire out to all the members. And so we're looking for a vice chair in this committee who will partner with us on the priorities we've laid out today, helping law enforcement, helping victims of crime, supporting a public safety trust fund, and a lot of those other issues. So we'll look at the applications and find the right person. I think we're good. Anything else? Anything you got, Sarah? You good?
Nope, I'm good.
You good? All
Ready
right.
to get to work.
Well, thank you, press. Hopefully this has been informative, and we appreciate, there'll be more press conferences soon. We look forward to joining you there. All right. I turned the mic
Thanks,
off.
Matt.